Yeah, let's do it.
All right, everybody. So we are back for episode number 34 of the Irish Iron podcast. So with the podcast, I'm kind of doing these now once every month. I'm kind of just keeping it, spacing them out a bit more. Like I think I've very much underestimated how much, stepping into running a gym would take it out of me. So I was like, I'm going to keep these to once a month where it's a bit more, fun and enjoyable. I'm not putting them out for the sake of putting them out. But that being said, my next guest is none other than James Melville. How are we doing, James?
We're good. Another busy day. So good to get chatting to you.
Deadly, deadly. Well, for everyone listening, James is a very well accomplished natural bodybuilding competitor from Northern Ireland. And he has gone on, he's done a wide variety of shows. So, like, I mean, kind of what was your, what would you say your favorite out of all the shows you've done and competed in? I have a few questions because I know a lot of natural bodybuilders, and a lot of them don't want to kind of step into the, at the time it was the UKBFF up there, wasn't it? Kind of running the main thing, and like you stepped into it and you did quite well. And like you won your class, you got to represent, and like I've always had a good amount of respect for guys like yourself who kind of realize like a good physique kind of speaks for itself. It doesn't have to be, drug fueled. It doesn't have to be, led down that path. And you don't necessarily have to look like a really good bodybuilder. So like what was your kind of crowning achievement so far, would you say, in terms of the shows? That all you've done.
Okay. I'd say I think probably the first British title that I won for the BNBF, which was 2018. But the two ones that really stand out to me is the first show in 2014, and that was the UKBFF Classic bodybuilding, and then 2018 BNBF. That really stood out because that was a really tough year all round, and so to be able to actually make it to the stage and sort of fulfill a bit of a promise, it was a good achievement and a nice way to sort of conclude that year. It was an ass kicker that year. So my father, he had passed away in the January of that year, through bad circumstances. And as much as he wasn't really a bodybuilding fan, he was always interested. He's like, "What are you doing with that show? What are you doing with them shows this year?" And I'd say, "Oh, I'm going to win the British title." So he passed away, and long story short, I was able to go and do it. So, it was a great accomplishment, and a lot of effort went into that year.
Yeah, I always found like growing up, I imagine like was your family like mine? It was like my there's no sporty background in my family, so I remember like when I told them when I was like 15, I said it was 15, I was like, I'm gonna be a bodybuilder. They were like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. We don't necessarily want that to happen because they didn't know what it was. They kind of thought I'd look like uh, a freak, what
Yeah,
was your kind of like what was your family's like introduction into bodybuilding? Because mine grew to kind of appreciate the effort. They may not
yeah,
understand like what it is, but like my dad and mom have been to like shows and with yourself, as you said, like your dad passed away, but before that he was saying like did he were they supportive of you, James, like coming up and everything into the shows?
they didn't really get it. I would say that my family was quite reasonably strict, and some of it was quite British. So for me to go onto a stage in a pair of budgie smugglers and do this thing on stage, it was alien. They didn't get it. And then on top of that, I don't think there's any mother that really wants to see their son walking in, his face all sunk in, he doesn't look well. They don't understand that that's part of the process, and so that no, they weren't behind it at all. And whenever obviously I went and won, the first show, and my mum actually asked me for a print. She wanted a photo for the mantelpiece, which blew me away. And to be honest, now she's been a massive supporter. She's loved it, and she came to. I won the overall title in Northern Ireland in 2017, and that was the first time that she had been out. And my mum, she always suffered with mental health, so she hadn't left the house in like 15 years. And this was one of the first times she came out, and you know, it was a big thing for her just to be there. And obviously then to be able to go and win the overall with her screaming like mad in the audience was a really crowning moment, man, you know. And that's what, you know, like we'll talk about that as this goes on, I'm sure, but bodybuilding's given me some amazing memories and experiences, much like yourself, I'm sure.
Of course, man. So like, yeah, talking bodybuilding, like growing up in Northern Ireland, like what was your first exposure to bodybuilding? Like for me, like down here, it's weird. It's like Dublin was kind of like, I suppose there was like two centers of bodybuilding at the time. I mean, there was Dublin on the east coast, and then you had like Galway, and you had Limerick on the other side. And like I kind of knew, like just because of the shows were always held there. I always saw posters up in my gym for the shows. But in terms of actual meeting bodybuilders and stuff like that, there was far and few in between where I grew up. So I kind of like, but I know up your way, like it's a lot more, you know, there's a big scene up there. So like, I'm interested to know like what your first exposure was to the whole scene.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I started sort of, I worked for a supplement company at the time, and I would have worked a lot of the sort of the trade stand for them at a lot of the shows.
Okay.
So like, you know, me and you discussed this before. I'm a bodybuilding fan, period. You know, it's nothing to do with natural or assisted. We'll probably delve into that a little bit, I think, as well. But, you know, I wanted to work at the shows. I just wanted to be around the atmosphere and the energy that was associated with that, from the spectators right through to the athletes and whatever else. And I just loved it. I loved the whole energy. And then, so that was probably, I started going to the shows probably in 2008.
Okay.
And I'd said from 2004 that I would compete someday. It was 10 years after that before I walked on stage. I just sort of was like, I need to do this now, because I think I'm just talking about it and it's never actually going to come to fruition. So, you know, just being around it, obviously it's intimidating because I'm not the biggest guy, and obviously being natural as well. I think that obviously there is generally a size differential. If all things are equal in terms of genetic potential, if somebody's assisted, they're going to be bigger than me on stage, and that's it. So I kind of you have to play to your strengths, and it's going to be, for me, it was going to be conditioning and stuff like that. So yeah, I just loved it. From 2012, I'd said we went to our first Olympia. So I'd said to my missus, she wasn't even into training at the time. I says, I'm going to, I surprised her with a trip to Vegas, but she didn't know that the real motivation was to go to the Olympia. So we went across, and we've been together a couple of years. We're sitting in the audience, we're watching Kai Green and Phil Heath do battle. Yeah. And Phil Heath was just, it was incredible, just how like 3D. And she had turned to me and says, whenever we go home, will you know, coach me and teach me how to lift weights? And then she's fallen in love with it, and she is a rocket. She's a wee powerhouse. Don't know many people, male or female, that could train at her level. You know what I mean? So she pushes me quite a lot. And obviously she competes within the BNBF as well as a figure athlete. So that's pretty much the start of the love of bodybuilding.
Yeah, no, like going to the Mr. Olympia has always been something I'd love to do, or go to like maybe the Arnold Classic. I think for me, like the Arnold seems like the show to go to, like but the days of the expo seem to be kind of disappearing. Like I don't think going forward there's going to be as big a buzz going to all those kind of shows, but then again, you don't know, because after COVID, I think people are just going to want to go and see all these things anyway.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'd say the Olympia next year will be absolutely, even this year, could be nuts. I mean, The lineup's pretty good. I mean, like, I'd be interested to see where certain, like James Hollingshead falls, and you know, I'm just trying to think. Like Kai Green looks really good now as well, but like, I mean, he always says he's coming back. I mean, looking for the Olympia. Like, I mean, would you follow the Open and like all the other classes, or would you kind of have your favorites, like when watching
Yeah,
all kind of shows?
I love the Open 212s and the Classic. I just think that, and all those divisions, I think at the minute are, the quality is there right through. I love the 212s. Just, those guys come in peeled, because a lot of them obviously are trying to come down to meet that 212 cutoff, and they're maybe competition ready at 225. They're coming in like raisins. And like one of my favorite bodybuilders is Eduardo Correa, Brazilian.
Yeah.
Wow. I think it was, so we went to the Mr. Olympia 2012, 2013, and 2014. 2015, then we went to the Arnold Classic in Columbus, Ohio. So we followed bodybuilding like all around, like obviously America and Europe, stuff like that. Went to all the expos and stuff too. I think from a show standpoint, the Olympia is better. Okay. Just the platform and the staging and stuff. I think the expo though at the Arnold just blows the expo at the Olympia out of the water. So yeah, there's pros and cons.
Like they've all like strongman and everything there as well. Like it's not good, so
it's like 50,000 people going through there each day. That's insane. Whenever you like you're standing in the queue going, we're going to be here a while, and Big Arnie, he's just walking around with a crew, about 30 security around him and stuff. It's really alien, but it's actually, it is kind of nice to see more people. And I think over in America, there's people that aren't in shape. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but they don't look like bodybuilders, but they're mad bodybuilding fans. Whereas I think really the only bodybuilding fans over here are people who are bodybuilders or retired bodybuilders or have family members who are bodybuilders. It's not like a sport that you just like sort of going to sit in the sofa, not train and go, oh, I want to follow that. Yeah. But yeah, like I went off on a tangent there. I remember Eduardo Correa came out and he didn't get first call out the 212s against Flex, and I was like, as soon as he walked out, I went, oh man, he looks amazing. He was inside out, and obviously the Brazilians were there in their numbers, and the place went nuts, like booing. And the next thing they moved him into the first call out, and he ended up placing second that year. I think it was might have been 2014. And he just looked amazing. And I actually, as much as I love James Flex Lewis, I thought Eduardo had him beat. He turned it back. His glutes were just like 3D peeled. There wasn't anything on him. He was full. How he presented himself on stage, I just thought was flawless, And I actually got to meet him and stuff backstage. And I don't really get starstruck too often, but he was such a nice guy. I was like, that's awesome, amazing. Loved it.
Yeah, who was the first pro bodybuilder you met?
Actually, so we've met quite a lot, obviously, in terms of talking to them, like maybe at the expo or whatever else. But the best story I have actually was we were going to the Arnold Classic in 2015. We had to fly into Newark, and from there, then you were flying out to Columbus. So she goes into the shop. We're getting like she's going in to get a sandwich and a bottle of water. And I see there's no bodybuilders. Like we're getting just a small flight. It's one of those wee small planes. And I see the back of this guy's head down the airport. And I was like going, that looks like Big Rami's head. And I kind of laughed myself and went, it'd be funny if that was Big Rami. So I kind of turned away anyway. And whenever I turned around, this thing was walking towards me. And it was Big Rami. And he is obviously the size. He was an animal. And he was off season as well. He was there, I think, whatever supplement company was endorsed by at that time. He was going to work at the trade stand or whatever else, right? Meet the fans. So I got talking to him the whole time. He sat with us in the airport in the waiting room 30 minutes before we were obviously getting on the same flight. So he sat and he dished on some of the other bodybuilders, what his opinion. And these were bodybuilders that were still competing. Mentioning people like Branch Warren and his opinion on like different physiques and who should be retired and who, you know what I mean? So lovely guy, but like his English was actually okay, like pretty good at the time. I believe it's better now. And then whenever he got onto the plane, It was one of these small propeller planes, and they had to move two guys from one side of the plane to the other so they could distribute the weight whenever he got on. The plane just erupted into laughter, because obviously these other people were not bodybuilding fans. They just see this guy, fill the whole plane. So that was a pretty cool experience, meeting the big man. And we talked about, we had a wee bit of banter back and forth, because I says, what do you think's the best gym in the world? And we've been fortunate enough to train in Bear Francis gym on numerous occasions. And he was obviously at that time, it's O2, or Oxygen Gym. And I says, I know, but there's no history. And for me as a bodybuilding fan and passionate about it, you can't, whenever you're in Bear Francis, you feel something. And although like the equipment and stuff in Oxygen it is undeniable, I don't think you would have that same feeling.
No, I mean, that actually goes into another great topic, man, because I mean, you own your own gym. So I mean, what I felt like now with the gym culture, like it's definitely, I remember growing up and I used to get trains and I used to get the buses out to all these different gyms in different counties across the country, like bodybuilding gyms, I mean, I used to go up to Drogheda. I went up north. I've been up to Galway. I've been to Limerick various times, and then the various ones in Dublin. But nowadays, like, it is harder and harder to find gyms that kind of specialize in bodybuilding. But you've kind of created a niche for yourself with your gym. So, I mean, what kind of motivated you to set up a gym, and what's the story behind the compound room?
Yeah. Okay. Take it back to 2007. I've been an active coach. So whenever people say, "Oh, I'm a coach of 20 years experience," and they trained their sister and their cousin for 3 years, I was like an active coach from 2002. So coming up to 19 years working in the industry, and so I was working in the council actually for 10 years as a fitness instructor, personal trainer, etc. And there was just no love in it. You know what I mean? You couldn't run the gym how you wanted to, obviously. They don't want bodybuilders in leisure centres, so they limit the amount of weight that they have, and no grunting. Actually, signs up no grunting, and it just creates an awkwardness. I think, like having to go up to say to somebody here, could you quieten down a wee bit there, grunt a little bit lighter or whatever. But so 2007, I'm training in a garage. I lived in Crumlin, and one of my friends at the time, we were training, me and two other guys. One of the friends says, "If you owned a gym, what would you call it?" And at the time, all we had was squat rack, barbell. And on the barbell, this is true, it was like Unbreakable, if you've ever seen the film Bruce Willis bench pressing. Well, we had tins of paint hanging off because we didn't have enough weight plates filled with water, and it was just insane. So my friend Kieran, he says, "If you owned a gym, what would you call it?" And I never really thought about the name, but I just said it out, the compound room. And the name obviously stuck. And from there, then from 2009, I started to acquire fitness equipment, gym equipment. And then once I'd sort of decided once I had enough, I would open up a gym. And that process took me 7 years. So I was buying equipment and putting it into storage. And then I went into storage and I went, I think I'm enough to open here now, because I didn't want any debt. So it was just being patient, really. And then we pulled the plug. The place, the council where I was working, was just getting worse and worse, harder to work there. And I was like, it's time to go. So 2016, we opened up the first unit, and we were there for 4 years. And then we moved into the bigger unit last year. So it's been a process. In terms of the niche, well, we tried to do the sort of, we do the calisthenics. We have that side of it. We have a lot of powerlifters that compete there. We're all like IPF bars and road plates and all those things, the platforms, competition, spec benches and stuff. But me being a bodybuilder, I want to make sure that all the machines that we have are like, the biomechanics is very good. You get that feeling whenever you're on it that, and you kind of know whenever a bodybuilder selected the equipment, it's like, yeah, that feels right. And so we have a lot of bodybuilders, primarily natural. There is some assisted there, and like I would train with some of those guys because unsurprisingly they're strong. I find that obviously highly motivating. Me trying to sort of hang on to them like a Jack Russell. So yeah, that's where we're at now. We're still intending to expand over the next sort of 3 years again. So that's the projection, and we have the steel beams in, so we can add another couple of thousand square feet. Like over a weekend, we could get that done when we decide that the time is right.
That's awesome, man. And I suppose, like, would you have like a team of athletes now, like for all the shows and stuff like that, or how would you kind of do it? Like, like would the gym be like for competitors, and like have you found like that's like what I'm trying to get at is like when I went to the UK, I remember there was teams of athletes, and it was pretty cool because like over in the Irish shows, you look around, you have coaches. You have coaches with athletes, but you don't necessarily have gyms with athletes. So I remember going over there and you had teams of athletes, and then you had kind of coaches that were associated with the gym. So like, how do you do it? Like, is your coaching and gym, like with the competitions that your athletes do be associated with your gym, or would it be more so your coach? If that makes
Definitely
sense.
the gym. Yeah, definitely the gym. I've never actually really promoted myself as a coach.
Okay.
Enough that I haven't had to, which is obviously a good place to be. But it's always been about promoting the compound room. And yeah, we have a team. So actually today we hold posing clubs for the natural bodybuilders, and we put them on for free. So we have guys from all around Ireland, from like Cork to Derry, Londonderry, all over the place that come down. We don't charge them in. They can train in the facility for free for the day, where there's a Q&A at the end. If like people just, and all that information's free, if it's like wee tips to do with their nutrition, or for us to scan the eye over them, do you think I'll be ready, etc. So we actually had a posing club today, and 2 of my guys are competing in 6 weeks in Birmingham, the BNBF Midlands show. So they're looking really, really good. So today they got awarded their personalized compound room athlete t-shirts. So we get them obviously with the initials and stuff on, athlete at the compound room on the back, etc. And obviously it's the black and gold team colours. And then we're traveling over obviously with them that weekend and stuff. So it'll be like full support. Look, we are massively fortunate with the members that we have. For example, me going to the British finals in 2018, we had a squad of over 20 from the gym came to support across to Liverpool, the Echo Arena, the best venue in the UK, and you stand on stage, and we did them, all the ones that travelled over, we gave them free green and white t-shirts, like Green and White Army, Northern Ireland compound room t-shirts, and they blew the roof off the place. So I'm backstage getting my urine sample taken, and the drug tester, he says, we had to get security for some of your guys from the gym. And I went, why? What happened? He says, whenever you won the British title, they tried to storm the stage. Which, that for me, I went, that just sums up what we have there. Yeah. We have got, everybody's very supportive. A lot of times we have people, like, there's been shows, like the British finals in 2018, I obviously competed, and I had 7 other athletes at that show competing as well. And we were all suited and booted. We had our team kit and stuff on, and we arrived as a unit. And 4 of them placed top in the top 5, the British, which, and then so 5 including myself, which was just fantastic. So actually we had the most, I think, out of one gym that placed top 5 at that show at the British in the UK. So we're doing something right, I think.
Yeah, and how like obviously as a competitive bodybuilder, like how have you found coaching athletes as being while prepping at the same time? Like, because I that's kind of part of the reason I stepped away from coaching was because I actually did find it a lot harder to focus on my own training and stuff like that. So I always commend people who can do both. So like, how did
Yeah.
you find that affected you?
Um, it probably helped me.
Okay.
I think it's just about balancing the workload, but it's like salmon swimming upstream. It doesn't seem as much effort whenever you're doing it together, and like I'm feeding off a lot of, they're going to have off days, I'm going to have off days and stuff like that, but we're all responsible for, if you're having a great day, you're responsible for dragging the corpses behind you. You're trying to pull them on, and that's going to come back to you as well. So I found it to be very effective. Obviously, it's stressful a little bit getting clients ready.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know what I mean, because they're all coming in at different, particularly whenever it's like new clients that you haven't worked with before, and you're really trying to work out, how quickly the body's going to respond. But whenever it's in the last couple of weeks and all of them are sitting pretty much ready, and there's a contentness comes over you, you're like, this is great. I'm happy that we're all here, and it's just for them to be part of that whole experience. I didn't find it really that difficult. What I did do though to offset the sort of work fatigue was I just dropped some of my sort of domestic clients back and just focused then on coaching the competitors, as we got pretty much into the last sort of 5-6 weeks. So I decreased the amount of overall coaching volume that I was doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like I found like the main problem with myself is probably I was prepping people at the same time I was prepping, but they just didn't want it as much. Maybe it was a case of they didn't. It was kind of first time preps, whereas it was my fifth show or something at this point, so I was kind of knee deep in. So um, it kind of annoyed me a bit when they didn't want to suffer like I was suffering. Like that's what I felt like. So I was it kind of bummed me out a little bit, that they weren't willing to go as far. And well, I'm not even saying suffering in terms of like crazy calorie drops or anything. It was just getting the body fat. Once I got to the point of, getting into the single digits, they kind of faltered a bit, and that kind of bummed me out. So like it's pretty cool to see that your athletes obviously, you vibe well off with each other because
Yeah.
there's a lot of like even down here, there's a lot of coaches who would be coaching people, and I've never really worked with the coach, so it's like if you bar one person, on and off, but I mean, with yourself, James, have you always kind of done it yourself, or did you kind of have a few mentors coming up that you kind of gained some knowledge from, or how did you kind of learn how to do it?
Yeah. No, I've always prepped myself.
Okay.
And the first show, as I said, I'd worked for a supplement company, and I'd sent through my photos to him. December 2013, and what do you think? And it was kind of, my photos were almost laughed at by this guy, and he says, "Don't be competing. You're too small." So I went through that prep and didn't tell anybody.
Okay.
And I was actually meant to be. He wanted me to work that the trade stand at the show that weekend, and I says, "No, I'm competing." So I told him on the Wednesday before the show. Just went through the whole prep, and literally it was I just pushed myself as hard as I could. I am self-critical by nature anyway, so I was like, I'm going just to get on stage for the experience, so I can tick the box. I didn't expect to actually fall in love with it, but obviously I went there, and I suppose while we're on the subject, I was backstage, and a lot of people that don't really understand bodybuilding think that these people are extroverts and like outgoing, and and the majority of bodybuilders aren't like that. Do you know what I mean? So I'm backstage, and I'm literally having a panic attack because me and a good friend of mine, Owen Young, were the two smallest in stature. So there was no height. It was classic, and we were all on stage. I can't remember, it was 15 or 16, I think, in the class. And I was backstage, sitting in the corner, wearing this baggy t-shirt, and one of the guys comes walking up to me, big guy, he's up pumping in the middle of the room. and I'm sitting there, full on panic attack. But on the surface, I look calm and ready, in the words of Eminem here. And he walks up and he says, "Do you know something we don't?" So to him, he thought I was sitting there like with an arrogance or like a, you know. And I was like, "No." And then Stephen Greer's missus comes walking back and says, "Right, these are on stage in 3 minutes." And I got up, did a couple of sets of push-ups, set of dips, and then stripped down. And somehow made it onto the stage. And it was pretty much a blur, the whole process. And somehow was able to win that show, which was just, it was massively unexpected, not just by me, but everybody. And obviously, only the missus obviously knew that it was prepping, and she was in the audience, and I didn't want to let her down. But ultimately, it was conditioning. And to be honest, I didn't know, and I'd love to know who this guy is. I was, we're going through, it was like first call outs and all this stuff. It was like second round. And then all I hear is this guy from the audience shout out, "Number 46, if you haven't won, I've lost a tenner." And I'm like on stage going, and like look down and it's my number, and I'm like going, "Are you serious? Like, I'm actually in this?"
Yeah.
And you see me on stage, my demeanor just completely changed. You know, because this guy had got nothing to earn by saying this to me. You know, he didn't know me. And I was like, wow, okay, let's go, let's push it. And, you know, got obviously through to the top three. Top three got their pose routine done. And then somehow got the win, got the W. Yeah. And that was it. That I turned from one show now till I think I've counted 14 shows since 2014.
Was the first show you did, was that a UKBFF show?
Yeah.
Okay, so you hopped straight knee deep into it like I did then, which is pretty impressive. Yeah. Awesome.
But before that time, there was no, like, I didn't even know the truth is I didn't know natural bodybuilding federations existed. There was nothing in Northern Ireland. So me working the shows, I knew about NABA. I'm not going to compete in NABA. Classic bodybuilding, I went, okay, height to weight ratio, you know, I mightn't look too bad in there. So it was, for me, it was a no-brainer. I was like, right, you know, that's the show that I need to do, and didn't expect it to do anything. And obviously then went to the British finals, and then even more surprisingly placed third at British and UK, and it potentially was the only natural guy on stage.
Yeah, that's which, yeah. I mean, I don't think people realize, like going into these shows, especially if you're a smaller guy, like it's pretty intimidating. I mean, like I remember going and because as a junior, there's no height, like it's obviously just age. So it's like I remember going over to the UK to compete in the juniors, and I always tell people this, like Ryan Crowley was in the same show. Everyone knows Ryan now because he tore his pec. And I just tell people, yeah, I bet Ryan Crowley. Like I remember, like I just remember I like laughing at that because he was pretty much like he was sick. Like all those guys were in the same show, or like there was like big dudes, like they were 6 foot, massive, and you know the quality won the show at the end of the day. I mean, the guy who won was smaller. He was peeled. He was some South African dude. The guy came second, was peeled, some Polish guy. And then like the guys who bet me, then it was just conditioning, you know? So I think like going into these shows, like, I mean, people who don't know bodybuilding, like they always think like, oh, look at that guy, like he's looking really big in clothes. He must be in shape, but it doesn't really matter, does it? It's like when you're on stage, you can look completely different to what you appear normally, and that'll play in your favor. So
I think the whole process with I don't know how you feel in the latter stages of prep, coming closer to the show. I'm so small. I actually weighed in lighter in 2020 than I did in 2014.
Yeah.
You know, how's that work? That's, you know, you've got 6 years, almost 7 years difference and somehow 1.2 kilo lighter. But I look bigger. It's just mastering the condition and the combination of that with the fullness. And you're either lucky if you get it in the first attempt, you're either extremely lucky or a genius, but it takes trial and error just to get that combination right. And obviously then being able to compete last year and stuff, I weighed in at 10 stone and half a pound. So 140 pounds. And that's 5'6.5". You know, it's small whenever you think about that as a mass. But lucky enough, it's not always size that wins.
Yeah. I mean, I tell people this: if you are in good condition, like if you're peeled, like I've never been peeled, but I've always been told if you've been peeled, you'll be in the first call out. Like if you're in the same standard of show as the other guys, like you'll get a first look.
Yeah.
You're in shape. And then it just comes down to like, you know, what do the judges want? I mean, do they want somebody who has all that like bubbly muscle, or do they want somebody who has just, you know, grainy conditioning with shape? Like it really just comes down to preference at the end of the day. That's the thing with bodybuilding, you know. So you can only control yourself. And like I think it's been a fortunate time for yourself and that you picked good shows. Like you obviously know, like, would Classic be something you would ever pursue, like in the new NPC qualifiers now, or do you are you gonna kind of stick to, you know, the BNBF stuff going forward, or like what's your future plans? Like, do you want to branch out a bit more and test your feet, or?
Well, last year the intention was to use the UKBFF as a warm-up show.
Okay, cool.
For the British. That I can't remember what happened. The show got moved. I think the Belfast show might have got cancelled. So that kind of obviously put a spanner in the works. And then I heard actually that Two Bros Pro were doing their first natural event.
Yeah. They're doing like a big Ben Weeder natural show or something like that.
That's right. Yeah. So like, but the way that it worked out last year, shows were getting cancelled left, right, and centre, and obviously you're going deeper and deeper into prep. And it was actually my missus. She says, you need to maybe jump into another show here in case the BNBF for some reason they can't make it happen. You don't want to waste the prep. So I jumped into the Two Bros Pro. In my opinion, I didn't feel ready, not to the standard that I'd set before, but I was like, I'll jump on anyway, and I won. But there was me and one other guy, so it doesn't count. And I was more happy with my stage performance. You know, I thought that the posing was pretty good, and you know, so I was able to at least extract some positives from it. Yeah. But it gives you it gives you like a moment of clarity, like whenever you can sort of reflect on like what was my condition, how was my performance, and it should be a primer for the main show that you're trying to focus on. So moving forward next year, I've already qualified for the British for the BNBF because of winning it last year. So that'll probably be next September, I would imagine, and I possibly will jump into a show before that. Could be UKBFF for a warm up, and I could probably either jump into the under 70 kilo or Classic, depends how I feel I'm looking.
Yeah, I mean, like going like the one thing I've always like kind of, you know, with the natural guys, like, and I think like, you know, it's something the enhanced guys should do is you guys tend to be in shape like 2 or 3 weeks out. Like you don't really do any like there's nothing crazy you guys do like in those final weeks. Like all the good naturals I know, they might do a little just, you know, some natural stuff like, I don't know, like a bit of yohimbine or like I'm just trying to think, like dandelion root and vitamin C. But like, I mean, apart from that, like they're just peeled. Like if they're in shape, they're in shape. Like with yourself, like what did you find was the key, like in terms of, not the key, but like would you've just dieted for longer? Would it have been like a longer diet and then you kind of just hold condition?
Yeah. To be honest, I say to my guys, I want you looking ready 5 weeks out.
Okay.
I want you looking ready 5 weeks out, because looking ready, and there's always a little bit more. And I try and say to the people, like, you're trying to set a standard for yourself each year, and if there's improvements to be made, then that standard needs to be beat. We want to be able to progress in like a linear fashion, year after year. So you're using those shows as markers. So whenever, like, my guys that are competing in 6 weeks, they're knocking on the door of being stage ready. And the intention with that actually is, as we get closer to the show, if they're in a good position, I can start. They don't need to deplete, carb deplete, increasing insulin sensitivity, and all these methods. I find, like, particularly with natural bodybuilding, that limiting the amount of variables as much as possible is always going to pay off. Like they use different sort of percentages and stuff, like saying, like, a good peak week can improve your physique by 5%, but a bad one could ruin it by 30. And again, it is this risk versus reward. In terms of like water loading, I only elevate water in alignment with the carbohydrate intake, just to help sort of in relation to metabolism. And if the bottom line is, if you're not conditioned, you will never look dry, no matter what you do in natural bodybuilding. It's as simple as that. You can't blame peak week for how you look on stage. If you look good a week out, don't deplete. You look good, don't deplete. It's too risky. Keep doing what you're doing. And I'm hoping that my guys, I'm going to be able to start putting their carbs up a little bit as they come into those last couple of weeks. And bear in mind that one of my guys, he's still consuming over 2,600 calories per day. We have him, like, his cardio is literally a step count. It's like 8,000 steps per day average. And just his training program, that's the only thing that we want to use. His carbs is averaging between 300 and 380 grams per day. Which is fairly healthy for a natural bodybuilder, and his condition is just improving at a proper rate.
Yeah, how much?
So
just for people listening, like, how much would he be weighing at this point, do you think?
He's sitting at 86.7 kilo as of this morning. So we actually had a pre-comp carb load yesterday. So I just wanted to play about with it. So I smashed his carbs up quite high yesterday, and he came into the posing club today. That was the intention, so I could see him in the flesh to see how his body reacted just with the sort of higher caloric intake, and obviously the higher sort of carb and glycogen. Looked fantastic. As soon as he started posing, you just seen the body come to life. So and it was the same actually with Anthony as well. So two really good guys that are going to represent in 6 weeks. I'm expecting big things from them, and they're going to watch this. So yeah,
no, brilliant stuff. Like, I always feel like, a lot of people get confused as well. Like, I mean, if you're in shape, and then like as he said, like, trying to peak or pull water or post, like it's crazy, because if you're in shape and you're flat, you then look like you're out of shape, even though you can be built. Like, if you're flat, you can look really watery, even though it's not water, it's just loose skin, And then like, I mean, I've been both. Like, I've been watery. Like I'm not gonna lie. Like, I've peaked some crazy. I've done a few things to just try them, because I just wanted to see if certain things worked or not. And at this point, I know, like, well enough what does and what doesn't. But at the time, like, I remember, like, being told all these myths, and it was like, you have to stop drinking water, like, 24 hours out from a show. So I went to a sauna. I was working in the kitchen when I was a junior, so I remember I was doing chef work. I went to a sauna the morning, the day before, cut water for about, I think it was like 24, 30 hours or something. And look, I looked okay. Like, don't get me wrong, it was quite funny, but it worked for me. Like, I didn't mind cutting water, but like for naturals and like other people, I always say, like, don't do stupid stuff like I tend to do, because it will fuck you up on the day. Like, I mean, have you had guys come to you where they've tried to carb up or done any crazy peaking up protocols, or have you ever tried anything like that, like just with like the water or the carbs or the salt or anything, and it's just not worked?
Yeah. No, definitely in the first couple of shows I did, I felt like 2014 somehow it paid off. So all these like variables, like you're throwing everything up in the air and just hoping that you catch it. And I think there was a lot of luck with that. That I did walk on stage. I looked, my condition was good. So did the peak week improve my condition? I don't know. It might have actually dropped it down a little bit, I think. Just slightly softer. I felt like I looked flatter at the start of the week, obviously, because I had carb depleted. But I think in terms of condition, the muscles still look really good. Whereas whenever I started playing with water, and I went up to like 10 liters of water a day for the last like couple of days, it was just ridiculous. And that's not comfortable. You don't feel good.
Did it for one show. And I just felt like it didn't feel good. Like I'll never do it again.
No. I don't like. It's the same with my guys. I'm like going, if it's this female, male. In that respect, it's the same. Just get them ready. A week, 2 weeks. Make sure that they're sitting. Yep, pretty good, and just gradually increase. And then day to day, you're just making the modifications. Whenever people are still waiting for peak week to look good, you're too late.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Go do a later show. You've mistimed it. Your condition isn't ready, and peak week isn't going to fix it. And that's probably the biggest critique that I can give. Whenever I get messages from guys asking what's the secret to getting into condition, and I'm like, there's no secret. It's literally time and awareness. I'm not ready. I got to keep pushing. I'm getting ready, knowing when to back off a little bit. In terms of like homeostasis and the balance of hormones and everything, we are getting affected the leaner we get. And you can feel it. There is like a downgrading, and there's no point trying to hurt yourself more. Just make sure that you've left enough time. There should never be anything drastic done, and like acutely. It should just be a nice, steady, progressive, either decline of calories or slight increase in expenditure, just to try and incur that sort of fat loss. And align yourself. If it's 28 weeks, I prepped last year for 34 weeks, and that paid off. I found prep actually pretty easy. So that's probably the best advice that I can give. It's just always leave more time than you think that you need, because you don't know what potholes you're going to hit on that process. You could be ill, you could suffer a strain, a tear, all these little setbacks. And if you're already just about going to make that destination at that time, you're probably going to panic your way through into that show and do stupid things. So be like, if you I'm going to start my prep on the 3rd week in March, start it in February. Just put that date on the calendar and align yourself with enough time to make that as easy as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people this all the time. The first few weeks of prep, it's not really prep. It's kind of just getting accumulated to what everything is and your structure and the foods and the routine again. But like, so I always say, if you're doing a 16-week prep, I mean, plan 20 just in case, shit hits the fan. I mean, like with myself, it's a weird one with myself. I've always I've given myself time, but I mean, and it has played in my favor, because like I've done multiple shows every year, so it's like it's always kind of like, if you make a mess for one show, you can kind of try, not make a mess for another show. But especially if you're just doing one show a year, like giving yourself that time and making sure you're ready, like it definitely plays into your favor. So like with yourself though, like how did you know that you were ready? Like how did you know to stop pushing once you got into that condition? Like, was there any signs, like with your body, just like tiredness or performance, like in the gym, or kind of what was your like go to kind of back off?
Literally, it's just, it is like observation and kind of knowing what is the standard conditioning that I'm holding myself accountable to.
Yeah.
The problem, you say to somebody, if you hit condition on stage, and you're obviously going back to that same federation the next year, anything less than that standard, even if it's still very good, right? Even if it's still very good, but it's just not quite, you're getting marked down. You know, a judge is going to go, he looked better last year. He was fuller, his physique was, you know, he popped more, striation was better, whatever it is. So I think that's probably one of the main things.
Yeah.
You know, just whenever the glutes are in, you got to get them glutes in, right? So whenever they're in, it's like, right, okay, let's slow this process down, start getting the calories back up a little bit. You know, and this is what I was discussing this today with a few of the guys at the posing club, and saying, you know, one of the guys says, oh, I lost weight last week and James has put my calories up. I went, yes, you're still in a deficit. You know, that's why you're losing weight. It's not like there's something magic happening here, but what we're trying to do is close that gap between deficit and maintenance. You know, if you're already there, we want to try and bring that back up. There might be a couple of days that you're going in a slight surplus, you know, and we just want to try and create like really good high levels of metabolic function, make you feel as good and as energetic as you're coming into that stage, instead of like dragging your dead carcass onto that stage, you know. And it's all about trying to enjoy the experience.
Yeah. I mean, like, a fresh physique will look better on stage anyway. Like, I've always felt like my best looks were, you know, it's usually like I'd be quite relaxed anyway. Like, I mean, I would be, I mean, a really chilled, or I'm having like a social anxiety attack at these kind of things. So I remember it's like at the shows, like, I'll either be completely relaxed or just not. And the problem is, like, if you're not relaxed, like, it's hard to be relaxed when you're not totally in shape. And that's what I always tell people. If you're in shape,
Yeah.
you're gonna be relaxed. I mean, there's not really anything you need to be doing apart from getting that tan right, and, you know, just those last minute things. But I mean, have you ever had any show experiences where, you know, like, as you said, you didn't expect to win your first show, but like, have
Yeah.
you ever had any other experiences where you thought, like, okay, like, you're gonna win and you didn't win? Like, because I've definitely had a few of those, you know. Like, not
Yes.
necessarily, James, because, like, if any, like, I'm not talking like, you know, no, I'm not talking like favoritism or anything like that. I'm also just mean, like, has there been any shows where you thought you were like definitely the front runner, and then somebody just came out and just won it, you know, who you didn't expect, or something like that?
Probably the closest thing to that would be, again, so in 2018, I'd won the British, and then I got, obviously, you qualify then for the World Championships, which was in Miami.
Yeah.
So I got my BNBF British team sweatshirt, which was a pretty cool moment. I love seeing that coming in. It was like a kid on Christmas morning, and went across. I left everything in that prep. Now, that, bear in mind, that was like another 5 weeks after the British.
Okay.
And my condition was a bit better. I do think I was a wee bit flatter. Potentially, I couldn't fill up. I was eating, my carb load that week was 1,400 grams of carbs per day on the last 2 days, and I still somehow, there's a flatness to the physique, and I just think that's because I was so lean for so long.
Yeah.
Because I'd done the Birmingham show as qualifier, and I had 8 weeks from the Birmingham to the British, so I'm conditioned for those 8 weeks, and then another 5 weeks to the Worlds, and I'm like literally inside out. And a good friend of mine, Tom Pointer, who he had placed, I think, second in the middleweights at the British, and I obviously won the lightweights, and we went across, and like Tom's fullers, like roundness to his arms and stuff like that, but, you know, it ended up a split decision between the two of us. Apparently it was like 1 point in it. So, like, I had that feeling backstage, you know, I was like, you know, I feel it's mine. And it wasn't like an arrogance thing at all. It was like, I knew what work I'd put in. And obviously me and Tom were quite close, and we've got a lot closer since then as well, you know, and I have a lot of respect for him as a guy and an athlete. And to be honest, it could have went either way, but I had it in my heart. I felt it. It was like going, yeah, I think that I've got this. And obviously, as I said, 2018 was a hard year. I was like, that would have just been the cherry on top kind of thing. And that 1 point hurt. That took me a few days to get over.
Yeah. It's a killer. It's a killer.
Yeah.
I remember, man. I mean, like, I've never been peeled. So, like, I've never had that opportunity to walk into a show and kind of closed the door on it. So it's always been, every show I've been, it's either been top three or, you know, I'm not placing. So it's like, it's really funny. It's like, when I'm top three, it's always the case of, oh, you would have won if you appealed. So, or like, you know, and I get it, you know, I totally 100% get it. So I've been in that position probably, I think 5 or 6 times where I've been like, oh yeah, I'm gonna place second this time at least. Like I'm gonna beat that guy over there. And then I look on stage at the pictures and I'm just like, just wasn't there. You know, I've never disagreed with any of the placings, to be honest. Because I can see it, you know. But like I mean, like considering like, you know, it's really hard, I can imagine, to kind of, when you are in shape and you don't win. Like I mean, I've never been in that position. Like I've always had that. Yeah, I've never been in that position just because I've never been in shape. I've always been close. But like,
Yeah.
have you ever been beaten by somebody, like, not like obviously with the natural bodybuilding, it's definitely a condition game. But like, have you ever had a client or anyone, you know, like for me, it's always hard when somebody isn't as conditioned and they bet me, which has happened before. Like I've been out conditioned before, out not conditioned. I think it's just preference for the physique as a whole, but you know, it just doesn't go against the drum. Like, have you ever been in that position where you come across somebody who, you know, they place better, but it's not because of condition, it's because of, I don't know, overall pleasing physique. I mean, like, I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, there's some physiques that you just go, what the fuck, and you kind of have to place them. I mean, have you ever seen that happen on stage, like with any of your clients or yourself, where it's kind of being like they're being bet, but it's just being, you just don't see why, you know?
So that what you're asking is they haven't placed.
Yeah, no, so it's like I mean, like if you're like, obviously you know yourself, like when you're in condition and you
Yeah.
get bet and somebody's bet you and they're in better condition or they just overall it's a better package and you can kind of see like why they've won. So there's no but have you ever been in that position where yourself or a client has lost the show and it's obviously clear to see that they should have won the show? Is what I'm kind of getting at. Like, has that ever been a position for yourself?
Um,
Or not
Not
one
really.
show, but one
Not
one class or something. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Not really in the BNBF. I think the most part the judging has been, you know, really fair for the most part. And yeah, we can actually walk away a little bit hurt and stuff because we've all invested time, effort, you know, to remain disciplined for a long period of time. A lot of people can't do this, you know, and particularly get to that level of conditioning. So it is going hard. And I always say to my clients, I want you to prep and train and wake up every morning like you're going to win this show. And I prefer you to have that mindset and suffer the hurt of losing
yeah,
than to kind of decide. For me, that's a better half than going through that prep, never truly believing it for a second that you can do it. I think if you can get somebody hungry and have a little bit more belief that they're going to perform better in the gym, they're going to, their adherence is going to be a lot better. You know, they're really going to listen to everything that you do, every instruction that you give, every modification of their nutrition, you know, and I work with some fantastic athletes and I love it. That's what keeps me passionate about this. Probably like what I'll say from another side. And so obviously I competed in the UKBFF 2014, 2015, won the Northern Ireland both times. Obviously top three in the Brits in 2014, didn't place in 2015. And then 2016, the BNBF was coming over to Northern Ireland for the first time. And I was like, oh, that'll be cool. I'll jump into that. So I went and won the lightweights and loved it. It was a great experience. The staging was fantastic. The way that BNBF do their staging, it's just so impressive. And you feel good on that stage, you know, which is probably obviously the most important thing. Now, I am really hard on myself in the whole process, and I pushed myself to get to the British, and it was in Perth, Scotland that year. And people get into my head a little bit. They were like going, like, mate, you're winning UKBFF. You're going to go across here and smash these natties. You know, it's no problem. You're coming home British champ, first go. And you try not to take that in, but obviously there is a subconscious element to that. And you're like, well, there is maybe, yeah, this maybe is going to be easy. Well, I went across and I went backstage in our category, the lightweights, and just one by one they were stripping off, and my heart just sank lower and lower and lower. And there's one guy, and you know, we're good friends. I've ended up meeting him in Nottingham afterwards for training sessions, you know, and there's a real sort of community, I think, within the natural bodybuilding in particular, I feel. And it was, you know, but Marcus Lee, you call him, he's turned pro now, turned pro in 2019, but he was backstage. I've never seen somebody so thickly dense muscle. And I was like, there's no way this is possible. How can this be natural? And literally, I was a wee boy beside a couple of these guys, like, and like they were my weight. They were lightweights. It wasn't like the classic bodybuilding where we're different heights and 14.5 stone and 10 stone and all that stuff. No, these are all like under 69, 70 kilo guys. And it just blew me away. And I walked away. Actually, so they only placed top 5 on the day, but the top 6 get scored. So there's like 15 in the category. So I didn't know that day where I'd placed, which hurt even more. I was like, I don't know if I'm close. And then the next day they put the results up and the top 6 got placed. And my wee name was just scraping in there at the bottom, number 6. And I took it. I was like going, right, okay, this is a platform here for me to, you know, I was humbled and I needed it to happen. Yeah. But that created like a hunger, and I, you know, and the thing with the BNBF, and this is I love it. Some people don't really like it, but they do the judges table at the end of the show. They take the time, they record it, it's all done right, and it's uploaded for everybody to see, and they critique your physique. So it came to me, it says James looked really good from the front, but from the back he's really weak looking. You know, there's no muscle in his, no density in his back, weak through the hamstrings, you know, all these things. And I was like, whew, couldn't believe it, you know, how there was a lot of negatives to take from it. But it gave me a really good direction. And then the next year coming back, they said you could see the obvious improvement in his back. He's taken the critique and he's worked with it, but he's still not there yet. I then placed 4th at the British that year. And then that's whenever I was like going, I wasn't being unrealistic then, coming in 2018 and saying I can move up here, you know, in that top spot if I just keep pushing, turning the screw and doing what I need to do. And I did, like I definitely did improve from the posterior chain. I focused more on just trying to maintain the front and develop the back, and it kind of, well, it obviously paid off. But that experience, just to see the quality and what's actually possible from a natural standpoint, there is some really genetically blessed guys, and I don't think that I'm as genetically blessed as a lot of the guys that are winning British titles. But I'm coming in conditioned, and year by year I am improving. So all those you do get marked, and it falls well within the judge's psyche as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, going forward, I mean, who do you think, like, for any listeners, there's definitely a few. I think natural bodybuilding is definitely finding its feet now with social media. I mean, you definitely have some breakout people who are kind of backing up their placings with, you know, bit of personality, because the thing is with enhanced bodybuilders, they're always going to have that kind of just free show aspect. You're going to be drawn to them because of their physique. With the naturals, I've always found, like, AJ Morris has always been somebody I've had good interactions with. I've met him once. Like, I remember just watching his training and everything, and just like a lot of enhanced guys I know follow naturals now. I mean, like, it's pretty cool to see. And I think it's more out of respect for, like, even though you're not necessarily as muscular or anything, it's not that you're not as muscular, because the condition's the same, the shape and posing is the same, the training's the same, the food's the same. It's just not as big. But I almost prefer the lines and the crispness of the physiques that are bought. There's no scar tissue, there's no, like, lumps and bumps that shouldn't be there. Like, it's always really nice to see a good clean physique. So it's always cool to see when somebody with the physique puts it out there. I mean, like, who are the natural guys that you would follow and would kind of, you know, I'd say give them a plug, you know?
Yeah. Probably my first interaction with Rob Waterhouse.
Yeah,
Obviously, he turned
he's
FBB pro.
yeah.
Have to get that. So obviously, Rob turning pro as a natural bodybuilder was a big thing, you know, for just amongst the natural bodybuilding community. And this is something that people need to consider, because I've heard this being said quite a lot. Like, natural bodybuilding is dead. This is what like so many people have said these words, right? Natural bodybuilding is dead. Name me like a celebrity, or name me a natural bodybuilder that you know. The reason why a lot of the top pros don't really come out and broadcast them being naturals, because they get constantly slated for fake natty status, and you know, there's only so much you can take of that whenever you're going through prep. And so I think a lot of them just, you know, you look at some of the top guys like Dave K, you know, holds so much muscle tissue. These guys aren't like, you know, they're not like pushing out a lot of stuff on social media, YouTube channels and stuff like that. You know, they're under the radar. They do their prep behind closed doors, and they turn up stage with the goods, and that's it. But I think it's that, like, the criticism that we're subjected to, you know, if you have any kind of standards, like, you're not natural, and it's kind of stripped off you without any respect, I think. But I think now, as you say, you have people like AJ and Kaifi as well. I competed against, you know, at the British there. He won the overall and turned pro, won the pro division his first go as well. Young guy, 23 years of age, trains like an animal. The guy's like deadlifting 330, natty. It's phenomenal just to watch, you know, how he trains. I think the content and the standard of the content that AJ is obviously producing is fantastic, and it's good to see it's putting a wee bit more of a light, I think, on natural bodybuilding as a whole. And from there, then obviously more people are actually coming out of the woodwork and want to compete, because it's being exposed a little bit more. And I think that's what natural bodybuilding is really needed, and we need more of that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Keep it positive.
I tell people this all the time, James. Like, I tell people, if I knew that the NBFI, I'm pretty sure, like, the NBFI did their first show in 2013. I didn't know it even existed. Like, I think I was like pretty much on that precipice of, will I or won't I, like, cross the dark side? And I ended up crossing the dark side because, you know, there was no exposure in Ireland for natural bodybuilding. It was, but nowadays it's great. You know, you have, like, you know, that crossover element now. You can go abroad and do all the natural shows. Like, you have the Worlds, you have, like, as I said, even the IFBB are kind of promoting their own natural like, I mean, I'll give one thing. I mean, the Team Universe, you're tested on the day, so I'm not quite sure how legit it is, but I mean, it's an effort. I mean, and then you have, like, the Ben Weider show, which, you know, that was done last year. And then all they need to do, like, I think at this point, like, you have certain guys who were natural. I mean, Keon Pearson, I mean, he was natural up until he wasn't. And, like, people say he wasn't, but I tell people this, to a trained eye, he was just extremely genetically gifted. And now you can tell he's on the juice because he's so much, looks completely
accelerated. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I kind of skipped on a wee bit, you know, in terms of so like Rob Waterhouse.
Yeah.
Rob Waterhouse. He would come over. He would train with me, you know, in the compound room and stuff. Whenever he's over, his Mrs. Claire, lovely woman. She's from over here. So, like, watching Rob's progress over the years has been fantastic, and the interaction I had with him, I just wanted to say this because I obviously sidetracked there a wee bit. But 2016 at the first BNBF show, when we'd done the pre-judging, and me and a few friends had walked up to the hotel. You know, I was like, I'm going to get, you know, bite to eat and stuff back at the hotel. And Rob had come up to the hotel. He had seen me leaving and came up and sought me out and spoke to me. And it was all like, there was a lot of positive, you know what I mean? And I was like, this is one of the pros. One of the judges went out of his way to come and communicate with me. Like, and I appreciate that, and I always will. And just to see, you know, what he was able to achieve last year and stuff, I just think is fantastic for him first and foremost, for Clara's missus as well. You know, she's been massively supportive in that journey with him too.
Yes, my first exposure to him was on Fuad Abiad's podcast. He actually had Rob on, and it was really good. Like, you know, it's like I don't like. I mean, to be honest, all my training partners in large majority have been natural, and to be honest with you, they've been the more consistent training partners because, you know, they've been able, they're naturally strong guys, and it's great. So like, they might not be as like I mean, there's certain things like, you know, they're not competitors, but I've trained with a few like natural guys are really strong. Like I've always found like that the progression that I've made training with some of the natural guys, like I trained with natural powerlifters for a bit. So I kind of picked off their strength methodologies, especially with like the bench press. And you know, have you found like, you know, like training with natural and enhanced guys? I mean, for me, I would say the biggest difference is probably I don't know if there is one, to be honest. I mean, like I've trained with some like genetic freaks, and then I've trained with some guys who just have that work ethic. But overall, I think the volume of training does go up when you're on something. I think that would be the main difference. Like with yourself, have you found like you'd go towards more the intensity route, or like would you do lots of volume and then just space out your training a bit more? Like how would you kind of do it yourself?
I think from like a programming standpoint, I think it's very, very similar between like assisted and natural. I think like the trend, most of the top guys, they call it like the pro split, you know, like all the pros call it that, you know, which is just the bro split, but it is just training body parts. I know some people obviously train push pull legs, and I've tried probably like yourself, tried a lot of different methods, and you want to produce information like from an anecdotal standpoint, you know, so I found push pull legs didn't really work for me. The bro split generally works, and like I use like the smaller body parts as buffers, you know what I mean, between sort of bigger days like legs and back, for example. I just we just push, you know, each mesocycle 6-8 weeks. If I'm really enjoying a mesocycle and I'm at the 5-6 week mark, I'll push it on to 8. If I'm sort of feeling like I'm clipping out at the end, you know, and maybe maxing out a lot of those lifts currently, then I'll rotate and cycle them out. The only thing differential I think is as we get closer to the show, a lot of advice I have is just decrease the amount of working volume a little bit, because you know it's very easy to smash your central nervous system. Obviously, the ability to recover is affected as well in the latter stages. Obviously, particularly as a natural bodybuilder. And I'm not of the mindset that I hear a lot of people say, what built the muscle keeps the muscle. What they're trying to say is if you're benching 150 kilo, you need to always bench 150 kilo. This is this is a dangerous thought. You know, as you get leaner, obviously you've less intramuscular fat. So like in terms of stabilization, connective tissue, all these things can be a little bit more jeopardized at that point. So I'm like going, there's more than one driving component for the hypertrophic response. You know, we've got like metabolic, you know, stress, mechanical tension. You know, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So let's just decrease the risk and go into preservation. And that's, as a natural bodybuilder, no, we can't grow into a show. That's the difference, I think. So your job is to maintain as much of your lean tissue as possible. So be careful with the exercise selection, the amount of stress in your central nervous system, and make sure you're factoring in plenty of recovery days in that process as well.
Yeah, well, brilliant. Yeah, no, that's a very, very, very key point to say, because I mean, even with ourselves, like I found like I would swap out different exercises. Like I'd swap out like certain things like free weight squats, just because it wasn't because the legs had issues, it was because the waist and the stabilization and everything just goes. But like I mean, there's no reason why you can't train with the same intensity. It's just a case of, you know, mixing and matching what worked. Like I mean, swap out that flat bench press for maybe some I don't know, like a decent hammer or something, or like a decent, like, because it's only like, it's the minority of the portion of the training. Like, you just want to hold on to that and not be able to, you don't want to hurt yourself. I mean, most injuries I've had have been either outside the gym or during that rebound phase where it's just been like, okay, I'm really strong, but the joints are not quite as strong yet. Well, like with yourself, if you had any injuries or if you've been, relatively injury free.
No, I had a really bad time in 2017. So this is actually, this runs on very well from what we just talked about there in terms of training volume. I do train quite hard, and do push sessions. Again, I train with a lot of powerlifters have jumped in for sessions and stuff, and obviously it's taking them outside their comfort zone in terms of the sort of volume. And I'm like going, we don't just be strong for 3 sets, we're strong for 18 or whatever you're doing in that session. But yeah, 2017, I don't know what it was. I trained 24 days in a row without a day off. The reason behind it was, the rationale behind it was, because I'm feeling good. I was like, right, okay. So, and then start getting like we phantom pains starting to pop, like around near a rib, near the facet joint, and serratus. I could feel it tightening up, and there was different things. And then I ended up with SI dysfunction and had 3 discs out, which, long story short, after the British finals, I had to come home in a wheelchair.
Damn.
True story. Yeah. And then literally it was like 8 months of just rehab. And that was 2017. Like I was on stage and I said to the girl at the side of the stage, Amy, I went, there's halfway through my routine, I go down onto one knee and hit a post. If I don't get back up, it's not part of the routine. Come out and get me up. And so I think she thought I was joking with that. But so yeah, it was a lot of rehab had to be done after that show. And the moral of the story is, don't keep turning the screw just because you're feeling good. Do what needs to be done and no more. Particularly, it's too risky as you're getting closer to that show. And to be honest, I'd managed to back somehow. And on the Friday before we were flying out on Saturday, the Friday I looked great. I was conditioned. Pictures, my glutes were in. Pictures in the kitchen there. Coat of spray tan stuff on. Looked the ticket, ready to do the dance.
Yeah.
Getting out of the bath on the Friday was going to be my last bath. As you know, like you don't shower the day before because you're getting your tan stuff on. Got out of the bath, my back went, and I just like puffed up like a water buffalo. I looked like crap. I went from a potential winner in my eyes to I could have placed lower than 4th, to be honest. And somehow I got the place, and standard was really good that year. But then my preparation, obviously, for 2018, a lot of that, even when I made good improvements, was just rehab. So
yeah,
just do what needs to be done.
Yeah. Well, that's a great thing to go out on, James. And look, thanks for coming on. And like, before you leave, I suppose, is there anything you want to plug? Like, obviously your gym, like, where can people contact you and the gym, and just any general plugs before you finish up?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm endorsed by Fission Nutrition, FISSION. Fantastic. They flew me over and stuff to Liverpool, like for photo shoots. They contribute to me competing and stuff as well. Massively supportive, and I've been working with them since 2017. They ask very little from me, I don't put up a lot of posts and stuff. But fantastic brand, and a lot of their products were like informed sport as well. So for natural athletes, like safe supplements to take, like zero risk. Obviously, the compound room is my gym in Lisburn, Northern Ireland, and we're members only. But if there's people from out of town, you can feel free to shoot us a message through Messenger on the page, even through Instagram. My Instagram is James W Melville. So anybody that wants to follow, please do, and I'll follow back. And obviously, Mrs. I have to give her a shout out. She's just awesome. She is literally whenever you're having those days, she's the engine. She just keeps pushing. She wouldn't let me have that easy set, put it that way. So she's an absolute beast. And lastly, thanks to yourself for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, man. Cheers. Well, look, I mean, obviously with this podcast, you know, my aim is just to get, you know, some personalities on that like I've interacted with, or like everyone I've had on, I've actually, no, it's very funny. I mean, I've definitely had a few people I haven't really interacted with, like but just through, it's a very small circle we interact with, like, you know, even within like the whole island, there's not, I mean, you're gonna know somebody who knows somebody. So I'm kind of shocked that people that, because the majority of interviews I see now going on, it's not bodybuilding, it's fitness. You know, I mean, there's a lot of fitness, but in terms of actual bodybuilding done by bodybuilders, it's not about bodybuilding. It's kind of like, it's all these coaching podcasts I see going on that are popping up, and I'm like, I don't want to be an expert on all this stuff because that's not bodybuilding to me. I want to put out something that people can watch because it's something that I would watch or listen, you know. And thanks for coming on, James. And I'll absolutely have to blast up at some point during the summer for a session.
Yeah.
When I'm back. Yeah, I've gone
Yeah.
to the gym. I've gone to the gym probably, Jesus, I mean, once a week for the last month, just while
Wow.
getting feet up with work and everything. But I'll be back training now. I'd say by the end of this week, I'll be back on schedule with food and everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, give me a month and I should be able to set something up. And we'll definitely, man. Thanks for coming on.
Awesome.
And for anyone listening, um, episodes will be out at least once every month. I will try and keep them going for every, you know, couple of months, but we'll see how we go. And thanks for everyone for listening so far. And give James a follow on the socials. Hit him up if you want to learn how to pose, how to train, or, you know, get an insight into what bodybuilding is about, because the guy lives it and breathes it, and, you know, no better man.